All right, so we are now recording. Okay, okay. So let me go ahead and share. So this is the Jquery assignment. Okay. So basically, the objective here is to kind of, get a feel for one of the many tools that you can use for dynamic web development that has been around for a very long time. It's only been recently sort of being phased out or displayed, but the point is that there's a lot, think of the fact that when they wanted to issue, the checks recently for the, to help people because of the pandemic, systems still had, they were still using COBOL or some systems like that. So you can imagine now how many websites are built, if you think of all the websites that have been built with jQuery. So a lot of them, not just for maintenance, but, development in general. But recently there have been some new tools as well, some new developments. So we'll take a look at those after this topic. Okay, so all right, so let's go ahead then and talk a little bit about this assignment. All right, so as you know, this is just a continuation of the the grade calculator. Okay, so this is just an extension of the grade calculator. The idea to understand how to implement jQuery, how it works, to learn to use jQuery in the client-side scripting, to learn to develop a client-side application using jQuery. This lab is based on the previous lab, so please take a look at the labs that I've graded. Make sure you follow all the comments that I made, on that, as it's basically a continuation of those. This one is not a continuation of the object-oriented programming lab that the last one you submitted. So that one's a little bit more standalone, okay? So this would be just a continuation of the one prior to that. So you're going to revise it so that, instead of JavaScript, it uses jQuery. That's really all it is. So that jQuery will be used. So you should use jQuery as much as possible, even though many tasks can be done using JavaScript alone. Okay. So a lot of what we're doing this semester, as you can see, there's a lot of options of how you can tackle something, and this is just one of them. So here's a few of the requirements that you have to do. Now, number one, each assignment, lab, quiz, etc., should be added to the HTML page as needed. So each assignment, lab, quiz, etc., should be added. So think about this. Each assignment, lab, quiz, etc., should be added to the HTML page as needed. So basically here, you're not going to have static text boxes, right? Instead, they're going to be dynamically generated. So when your HTML page is loaded, there should be no assignment text boxes. You will need to provide a mechanism such as buttons to add text boxes as needed. Please make sure that each type of assignment should not exceed its limit. Okay, that is, if you have 10 labs, there should not be 11 labs. All right. The grade calculation should be done without pressing the calculate or submit button. So that is to say it does it automatically, like with autocomplete. So instead, it should calculate the grade as you enter or change the value in any text box. So hint, you will need to use a special event with the text boxes themselves. So instead of, let's say, on click or on something, you would probably do on change or something along those lines. Make sense? All right, so let me know if you have any questions. Number 3, you should use the each method. So the each method, I think we've seen that a little bit in the slides. Obviously, we're going to do some examples of these things today and next Monday, or sorry, next Tuesday, to get a better feel for how it works. But you should use the each method of selected elements to calculate the grade and total percentage points. Please review this section of traversal in jQuery for details and an example. Number 4, you should test your code in at least 2 different browsers. Okay, so make sure you test. I will still just review this on Firefox, but make sure you try it out in several browsers. Make sure everything looks good. You should have a separate CSS file for any styles you need. I've noticed that a lot of you are doing that in the homework, so that's good. And a separate JS file for the JavaScript, and I've also noticed that, so that's pretty good. And then after that, just please follow good coding styles and adopt meaningful names and good naming conventions. The deliverable, that you guys have been doing that correctly. Just an electronic copy of your lab report with screenshots of your code working, just in case it doesn't run on my end. I can take a look at your Word document, along with all your code files, HTML, CSS, and the JS files, submitted, of course, on Brightspace, and you can please only use zip for that. You can zip the entire, all the files, including the report, in the one zip file. Okay, so that's the homework assignment. As you can see, it's really straightforward. You take what you built for the grade calculator, and now you just have to meet some of these conditions, okay, of using jQuery. Are there any questions so far? Thanks.
Not yet.
All right, so pretty clear. All right, so if that's the case, then we've talked about the Word document, right? So the Word document has been addressed now, or the homework. Now we can go, let's go back to contents. Okay, so that's jQuery. Later on, we'll cover jQuery UI as well. And then, like I said, JavaScript again, a few other topics later on. So now let's basically start a notepad. So I'm going to create a new file. So we're just going to do it as we've done in the past. So let's go ahead and let me start. So go ahead, open up your folder there and create a new text file. All right, so go into your 362 folder. This, under jQuery maybe. So we've done the first example and really the dropdown. So we looked at how to call the jQuery function, right? And we also did the dropdown with jQuery. That was the last one I believe we did. So we're just going to pick up from there and do a few more examples. So go ahead, create a new file. Call it, let's see, let this one, call it jQuery styling. So jQuery underscore styling .htm. And open that in Notepad++. And I'm going to share that screen. All right, so I'm sharing the Notepad now, and it's pretty much the same approach. I wonder if I still have some of the code. Yeah, I still have some of this. So I'm just going to copy from the old one because instead of typing up everything again. Okay. So these were the original examples. All right, and we're just going to start with the basic thing that we've been using. consistently all semester. We have our HTML tags. We have the head section, the body tags. We have a jQuery, URL there, the source, and then we have our script section where we can write code, so we can, practice a little bit more. So in this case, this example, we're going to play with formatting. All right. So basically, some of these, we're just going to play with various tricks. All right, so we might finish this today, I think, if we have plenty of time. So we may, so that homework may be due 1 week from today, because really I just have to do like a few examples. And then I think you'd be good to go for that assignment. So let's go ahead and create a table. Let's go in the body section here. And we're going to have a table. We're just going to modify it a little bit. So I'm going to create table. Okay. Also, before I forget, if anyone missed the exam for whatever reason, you need to send me an email immediately, okay? I don't believe anyone missed it, but just in case somebody missed it, email me ASAP. Remember, we had an exam on Tuesday. All right, so this table will have 3 rows. All right, so we're going to do a table of 3 rows, TR. Okay. And it's going to have it's going to have 3 rows and 2 columns. So we can add the columns here, and then we can just copy paste. So I'm going to do H. Okay. And we're going to have just 2 of these. And then we're going to have, for the rest, it's going to be table data. So it's going to be, copy this. Okay, change these to table data. Data. Okay, and the last one. So we have 3 rows basically with 2 columns, and then we're just going to put some information in these to kind of identify them. So we're going to say column number 1, let's say, and then this one is going to be column number 2. And then here we're going to do cell 1, cell 2, and then cell 1 and cell 2. Okay, so we have these, that basically. Okay, then we're going to have a couple of buttons that will call some functions, and the functions, will interact using jQuery. So let's say we want a function to add a border, right? So we have this, the table is going to have, we're going to add a border to it. Okay, so then I'm going to create a button here. I can do it, just like a regular input, and then type equal button, let's say. Okay, so we have a button, And then the value of this is going to be add border. Add border. And then we're going to say on click, we're going to call the function add border. Let me put this in double quotes. Okay, so, and then let's add a break line here. All right. Next line, so we can copy this. Next button will be a, let's also, well, later we can work with that one, but let's just focus on add border. So now we need to have a function in here in the script called add border. So I'm going to do function, and I'm going to say add border, curly bracket, close curly bracket, and this is what I'm going to do to process. Now, initially, we might want to have some styles in the table before we modify it just to see the effect. So I'm going to go over here, and I'm just going to add some embedded style sheets here. Let's just say style. Okay, and close style. And then we can specify here that we want the table we open curly bracket, close curly bracket, and we want the border to be something. So let's say solid 1 pixel gray. Okay, so let's start with that. And we can also create a class here for the style, and we can just say dot border, and this will be equal to border dash. So now we're going to change it to dash 1 pixel red. Okay, and just make sure this should be curly brackets. All right, so that's our table. So let's go ahead and just generate this. Let's take a look at what it looks like, make sure we don't have any errors before we start trying to manipulate this with JavaScript and jQuery. So I'm going to open this in Firefox. I'm going to share the screen. So you guys should be seeing, there's, my gray border, and I have, my little table, 2 columns, column headings, and then 2 data rows. All right, I'm going to click on add border here, right? And you can see nothing happens. But now what I want to do is I want to use, these approaches, calling the function so I can modify some parameters of this. All right, so let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to switch back to the notepad. Okay, so now basically what needs to be done is we need to go into the add border. Okay, and we're going to grab the elements. So I'm going to grab certain elements like the table heading element. So I use the jQuery function. Okay, I can use like the selector here, right? And I'm going to pick that I want, table headings, right? So that allows me to grab the table headings, think of it as a list, and then I'm going to say the property CSS of it. Okay, so I can do something to the style. Notice the styles that I have over here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say I want to modify border to be, a certain, have a certain aspect, right? So the certain aspect will be dashed. It'll be dashed 1 pixel blue. Okay, so that's basically the, the change. I also want to maybe grab the table data cell, so I'm going to do the same. Select that, table data, .css, and I'm going to do the same. I'm going to grab the border. Right, so I'm going to say border. Comma, and then I'm going to modify it to be, let's say, dash 1 pixel, say red. Okay, so I'm going to try that. So now let's see what happens. Okay, so I'm going to run this. I'm going to click on save, and I'm going to go back to the file, HTML. So I'm sharing this. I'm going to obviously refresh the page, and now let's see if it takes effect. So it should be the first button, right? So I'm going to press on that, and I guess I must have pressed it too quickly. You can see there that I was able to make the borders of those elements blue and red. I can also grab other elements. So we can go back to the notepad. Grab over, go back to notepad. And here I'm going to grab message 1 and just kind of display a message saying, I've modified. So I can do $, and £, message. Okay. And then text. Right. And we're just going to say something like borders changed. Okay. So we do borders changed here. Okay. And now that's it, right? So that hopefully that will grab the message and display something. So once again, we can switch back to the website, refresh, click on this, and that didn't work. Is it message 1? Okay, let's see. Oh yeah. So I have a message 1, message 2, message 3. You're right. Thanks. So this should be then message 1, so that we can grab one of them. Okay. So now I'm going to try it. I'm going to save it. Once again, go to the page, refresh, and there we go. So borders changed. So now we've done it, and that's it. It's pretty simple. Beyond this, obviously, you guys can do a lot more. These are just meant to be examples to kind of help you with the homework assignment, and also to help you to learn the logic of it, right? Because there's a lot more that you can do. The last thing we can do here is let's consider another type of tag that we haven't used so far in the semester. Let's add an anchor tag. So I'm going to go over here and just add an anchor tag. Okay.
You're not sharing your screen, Professor Calix.
back to Notepad. All right, so there I added in the HTML here, I just added a simple anchor tag, links. And that's just so that we can also, I can also show you how that can be modified. So in this case, what do we want to do? We want to take that anchor tag, which is just a placeholder right now, and add to it a link. So we're going to go over here to the second button now. We're going to give it a new purpose to say, add link. We're going to create a new function, add link. Okay. And then now we need a new function over here, function add link, just like that. Open curly bracket, close curly bracket. All right. And so now the purpose here is that we want to change certain things about the link. So we're going to change the text, and we're also going to change the attribute of it, right? So the way that we can do that also is, select, right? We select the anchor tag. So we're going to say A. And then after that, there are certain tricks that you can do. For instance, if you had several here, we only have one. But if you, I encourage you to play with this, add like 4 anchors in there, A tags, and play with this a little bit so you get a better feel for it. But you could say equal, and then you can specify which one do you want by index, right? So you want the first one, the second one. So we only have 1, so obviously it would be 0. But if you had 4, you could select, oh, I want 2 or 3. All right, so we select the first one. So we have the anchor, we select the first one, equal, and then now, so let's say we had a set, we can grab, that element and now change the text of it. So do semicolon, and the text is going to be, in this case, whatever you want. So let's say, we're using jQuery, so appropriately jQuery, and now hopefully this will change that link. So let's go ahead and try that out. I'm going to go to the browser once again, refresh the page. Okay, I want to add border. There you go. I want to add a link. There it is. But it's not clickable, right? That's, usually you have a link, you want it to be clickable. So then we also need to change that, and that's going to be for the attributes. We can actually add attributes. So then I can say, go over here, and now I can once again grab the anchor tag. I can do a tag dot equal. And then, again, if you had more, this would make more sense. And then now we specify that we want a specific attribute. So in here, we need to specify what this attribute is going to be. So we can do name value pairs. So we want the attribute to be, let's actually add this, kind of as a dictionary. So we do href, right? href is the attribute for the source. And then obviously colon, and then the value will be whatever you want it to be. So for instance, we want to go to HTTP, and then we want to go to, what is it? PNW, www.pnw.eu, something like that. And so, whatever you want it to be. So let's go ahead and try that. Let's see if that's good enough for this to work. So I'm going to click save again. I'm going to share the screen. Go to the browser, refresh, right? I can do add border. Now I want to add a link. Okay, the link is now blue, which means it's clickable. You can see down here at the bottom, it says PNW. I click on it, and it takes me to PNW. There we go. And that's what's so great about these things is that, you know, they're dynamic, right? So we're doing everything dynamically, which is what you would want to do. All right, that concludes this example. Are there any questions?
No questions.
Questions. Pretty easy, right? A lot of this is pretty easy. Once you get JavaScript, I think the basic idea, all the other frameworks are pretty consistent. You know, they just have syntax. And what I keep saying, they just become more intuitive, which is really what's really great about a lot of these is that they just become a little bit more intuitive, or more in tune with, you know, the other constructs that you're used to in programming. And of course, they have more power. Some of them just have, although this is much more powerful than what we were doing statically, you know, the frameworks do become a little bit more, you know, just give you nicer, I guess, nicer content. All right, so let's see. We've talked about the homework, right? And that has been addressed. So next week, I may talk a little bit more about the homework assignment in terms of examples of how you can do it. Okay. But now let's see, I want to do an example of adding, let's say, let's see. We talked about making things clickable. And really in your homework, what I'm thinking about your homework is that the challenging part of it will be to create the text boxes, right? The best example so far that you have on how to create the text boxes would be how you created the dropdown. That's really ultimately the best example for that. But let's do another example here of creating of playing with a table and trying to create some of it a little bit more dynamically than before. Okay, so again, I'm just going to go ahead and create a new file. So let me stop sharing here. You're going to create a new example. Go to your folder, call your new text document. Let's say jQuery you know, dynamic, or more dynamic. The computer just froze. Okay, here. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yep. Sorry, my computer froze there for a second. Okay, so I was creating the file, and jQuery dynamic table, more dynamic. Save it. Open it again in Notepad++. And I'm going to share the screen. So you should be seeing the Notepad now. I'm going to proceed to just copy the code from the previous example. I don't want to have to type it all. Control copy. All right. And this time, again, let's just clear these. I like to leave this clear, but we do need, you know, we do need a table. However, this time we'll need the same two buttons just to play with it. And what we want to do is we want to add rows dynamically. Okay, because this will be an intuition for you guys to think about adding your tables, or sorry, your text boxes. Remember that text boxes should always have IDs, right? They should have unique IDs. So if you use a for loop, when you create the IDs, it'll be like lab1, lab2, where the lab is a word, and then the 1, 2, 3 is an index in the for loop, right? So keep that in mind. This time around, let's just create a table with no rows, okay? So we're going to take out this row and the second row. We're just going to leave the columns there, and our goal is really to populate. So this is a nice one. We're going to populate this table with some data, and then, basically operate on it. So we're going to want a add row button. Okay, so add row. And of course, we can just call it here add row, just like that. Right, to keep it simple. And then in the, we can go back up here to the script now. Obviously, we can create a function add row, right? Open curly bracket, close curly bracket. Okay, so there's our function. And now we can think about what we're going to do. So every time we want to create we want to add a row, first we need to create it, right? So we need to create a row. So we can say, var, and then I'm going to say new row. So I'm going to, just some name, new row, whatever. New row. And now we can create it very similar to what we did before. We just use, again, the selector. And inside here, we can actually create by using the tag. So I'm going to use double quotes here. And I'm going to create, table row, tr. And then inside, this will have, this needs to have two table data, right? So we're going to say then two columns. So then table data. But we're not going to close it here because we want to put actual data inside. So that's why instead we're just going to concatenate and we're going to enter some number. So let's call it number 1, which is a number that we have to figure out what that's going to be. And then we continue here by closing the table data cell now, right? So this closes like this. That's 1. Okay, and then we open the next one, table data, and again, concatenate another number, in this case, number 2. Again, we have to figure that one out as well. Okay, and then this one, gets closed, so table data, and it, oh, we need to add the, my cursor has disappeared for whatever reason. Interesting. All right, so table data there. And then we just close the table row. TR. Okay, and and the double quote. So that's basically how we can create a simple row dynamically. So if you can imagine, this is exactly how you will have to create your text boxes. Okay, you'll have to follow the same approach. Now the next step we want to look at is we want to obviously generate some data randomly. I'm going to go over here. I don't get why my cursor has gone away. Give me a sec. Okay. Okay, so my cursor is back. I don't know. Maybe a glitch in the matrix there. All right, so now we can do the numbers, right? So we're going to generate these numbers, number 1, number 2. We're just going to use some built-in functions in JavaScript, you know, math. So math dot floor, right? And then generate some random numbers. Math.floor, math.ceiling, they're just functions that round up or down. And then in here, the key thing is I'm going to generate a random number of some kind. Math.random. Okay, and usually these are numbers, I think they're between 0 and 1, so you can multiply them times 10 to make them a little bit bigger. Just do that here. And let's just do a +1. You know, I'm just creating, you know, some numbers here. And you can play with this to generate other numbers. And so that's number 1. And then let's generate number 2. Okay. And this will be var number 2. And it's because these are random, right? So one will give you one number, the other one will give you another number. So that way, what we're doing here is every time that you click add row, you generate 2 random numbers, at least in theory, and then you're going to create the table row. But this only creates the table row. We still need to figure out how to add it to the table. So let's try that. So how do we add it to the table? Well, we have the new rows, so now we can call the table. So I'm going to call, use the selector again. And in the selector, I'm going to call the table. Okay. And now I'm going to say table for the table dot from children, and then once I grab the children, I'm going to basically that array, if you want to think of it that way, I'm going to append new row. Okay, so let's try this. So hopefully this will work. So let's see. Yeah, so let me save. Now let's I have to open the file in the browser itself. Okay, I need to share that. Okay, so you should be seeing the table now. And now the trick is to click add row and see what happens. Ah, it worked. So now I added a row and the values are 3. And now you see the random. So, and you can see how this is a table that initially you could have created statically, right? You could have just built all of those elements statically. But now you can see that you can easily generate everything dynamically. And that just gives you a little bit more power in how you want to proceed with what you're doing. Does this make sense, guys?
Yeah.
Good. All right, so now let's see what else do we want to do here. We have, let's say we want to calculate the total here, right? That's somewhat similar to the grading example, right? In the grading example of the homework, you'll have grades, column, labs, quizzes, exams, etc. And you just want to grab data either by ID or by tag. So here we know that all of these numbers are within table data cells. So we have that advantage, right? And so we probably want to create another button here that says something like add total or calculate total. So let's go back then now to our code. So I'm going to share with the notepad here. All right, and this one, let's just call it, get total. So obviously we're going to change the name of the function to get total. All right, and now I can scroll up here, create the function get total. Okay. So we've defined the function get total here. Now on the homework, it said that you guys needed to use a function called .each. Use the .each to kind of iterate through things. So here I'm going to do an example of using exactly that function. So let's create a variable total, or more normal convention, initialize it obviously to 0. And then now I'm going to use the selector to grab all the table data tags, because all the table data tags include data, right? So I can just do that, TD. All right, and now imagine that whenever I do this, I grab all these numbers, because this is a table data, this is a table data, this is, all of them are. So I have all of those objects now in my possession in a type of an array. And so now I can decide what I want to do with them. Well, what I want to do with them, since I have a list of them, is I want to iterate through them. So to iterate through them, I can just say each, basically. And we had seen this in the slides before. Okay, we had seen that each. Okay, now the trick is that, what will go in here, right? So in here now, since we have, every time we're doing an each, we can actually do the processing of that each element inside here with an anonymous function. So I'm just going to say function, and then I'm going to say, it's anonymous, so I don't need a name. Each object will have an index associated with the element and the element itself. So index and element are passed kind of automatically here. As I'm doing, the each function takes care of that. All right, and then now I just need to represent within curly brackets the contents of the code of jQuery, right? So here at this point, I can move this down so I can write my code in the style that we've been using. So here is now the content. So what do we want to do? We want to take each element and basically calculate a total. So we can do total equal total every iteration plus what? Plus each element. So then we grab, the element itself. So we have it there. We have the element. We need the contents of this element, which will be .html, which is just going to be the number. Remember, though, that this will return a string. So I should add the semicolon here. This will add a string. So the last thing we need to do is we just need to parse it to int instead of string. So I'm going to say here parse int, right? And that's going to be that one. All right, so I grab the element, this element, of course, because I'm passing, which are all the table datas. Remember, these are still data structures that contain a lot of information. I need just in particular the HTML content of that. That becomes the number, but in the format of a string. So then I have to use the parse int basically to convert it into integer, and then I just add it to total. Once that's been added to total in the for each, hopefully we can just display the result in one of the messages that we have below. So we have 3 of them. So once again, we can call the jQuery function, and we can say something like, in this case, message 1 dot text, and in here then, what do we want? We want to just show the total. All right, so we can just display easily total in here. Oops. Total. And that should be it. That first of all, this shows you an example of the each in for the homework, but also we should be able to add some numbers. So let's go ahead, save it, take out your, if you have a calculator, maybe you can compare, make sure this is correct. So we're gonna go ahead to our table. We're gonna have to refresh, of course. And now let's say that we're gonna add just 3 rows. So 1, 2, 2, 3. So if we were to add these numbers, that would give us 14, 25, right? So that should be 25. So let's see if that's correct. Click on get total. There it is, 25. Very good. So if I do a couple more, right, and then get total, it should increment 45. You can do more and more and more. Get total, and it increases. And it's all very dynamic, on the client side. And this just, again, shows you another example of how to use jQuery for our purposes. All right, so I'm not hearing any questions. It sounds like you guys are understanding this. All right, so that completes that example. Let's go back to the code for a second. All right, so that completes that example. Are there any questions on it?
I don't think so.
Oops, sounds like you guys, this is pretty easy, so that's good. Okay, what else can we do? Yeah, so definitely, I think between the rest of today and Monday, or Tuesday, we'll cover all the examples. So really, this assignment could be due next Thursday. Okay, so start working on it. You've already completed your object-oriented assignment. That's submitted. So I'll take a look at that. And then start working on this one and plan on submitting it by a week from today. Okay? So let's see what else we can do. Oh, this. Let's try this example. This one looks interesting. So in this case, we will add events, clicking events, functions, etc., to a table. So we're still going to be using a table and some, 4 buttons this time, and we're just going to be playing with the table. So really, we can use the code from this example that we did before, right, where we have a full table. So we're just going to add 2 buttons. So let's go ahead and create a new file. Let's create a new file. Let's call this one jQuery events. That's an appropriate name. share. Okay, I'm going to close this one here, but I'm just going to copy this code from the first example we did today. It'll be very similar, but it'll have a little bit more functionality. We're going to add a couple more buttons, so you can just copy these. Copy that. Then what else do we need? We have the table there. We can leave those functions. They're not doing any damage. All right, so we added borders. We did that. Now what I want to do is to add a clicking event. So let's add a clicking event. So I'm going to create a function, add basically click, let's say. So in this button here, I'm going to say add click. So it's really now so that our table will be clickable. Our one of the cells at least maybe will be clickable. All right, so add click. Okay. So because we added that function, then over here we can say function add click. Just like that. All right, so we have the clicking event. So let's look at the table first, okay? So before we run anything. So this is Jquery event. So I can go ahead on the folder, Jquery events, open it in Firefox. So we have our buttons there. This still works. Add link still works, but now we want to add a clicking event here, right? So that basically I can click on one of these. Maybe I'm going to click on cell 1. Maybe I'm going to click on cell 2. I really should have called these cell 1, 2, 3, and 4, but you can do that. All right, so now what do I need? First of all, I'm going to grab all the table. Let's do this with the table headings, right? So I'm going to do, maybe I want to click on what says column number 2, and that should do something. Maybe modify the message, etc. So how do I do something like that? Oops. All right, so go back to Notepad. So let's think about it. One way of doing it is to use the selector to capture all the table headings, right? So I can do this, and then I can grab the table heading. So there's 2 of them. And then I'm going to say, well, I want the second one. So that one is equal to 1 because it starts at 0. So I'm going to say equal 1. And then this is called chaining, by the way, when we start doing all these dots. And so now I do, to that one that I just grabbed, I want to add a method called click. Okay, so that is to say, whenever somebody clicks, something should happen. So what is the thing that should happen? Well, that I can specify in here directly as an anonymous function. So I can say function, anonymous, and then open curly bracket, close curly bracket, right? So I can have my code sort of in here. Now I probably at this point want to move this down. So again, this is where the code would go, so it's a little bit more readable. So what's that code going to look like? I want to, whenever somebody clicks, I want to display a message. So again, use the selector, right? And I'm going to grab one of my messages. In this case, we can grab message 1, for instance. Message 1, right? I grab it, and then what am I going to do? I'm going to change its text to a message, right? So I'm going to change the text of it to some message. So let's say you clicked heading number 2. You guys see that? So basically, now we can proceed. Let's try and generate the file. Okay, refresh. Okay. So let's see if it works. Let's add the border. Works. Add the link. Now let's add the click. Now, before I add it, let's see. If I click on here, nothing happens. You see that? Nothing happens there. It's not clickable. Now I'm going to add a click. At this point, hopefully by pressing that button, you can see that there. Press the button. I have added the element. So now the trick would be if I go over here with one click, I should change this down here. So let me do that. And there it is. You click heading number 2. So I was able to dynamically add an event on there. Okay. If I wanted to add a double clicking event, all I would have to say, instead of click, I would say, double click, right? So double click. So for instance, I could probably just go over here, add click, control copy, pretty much copy this, but now I want to grab one of the table data. Let's say I want.
You're still sharing your website or the webpage.
No, sorry. All I did is I copied this one. I took this code and I copied it, and then I got this. So I just copied it, and then I changed the table data there. So I changed that table data, and then now I want the third one. So actually, it should be 2, right? So on the third one of the table data, so the 4 table data that I have, table data cells, I'm going to add a double click event. So just DVL click, right? And once again, the code inside is pretty much the same, except now maybe I'm going to add it into message 2, and here I'm going to change the message to you double clicked on table data, the third, on the third table data, just like that. Okay, so let's see if that works. So now I save it, go back to the page, refresh. Okay, so add border, add link, and now, see, it would be this one, right? Cell 1. So if I double click, nothing happens. If I click, nothing happens. Now I'm going to add the click event. Clicked on it, right? Now if I click on this, you clicked heading number 2. Now if I go over here and double click, nothing happens. Double click, nothing happens. Double click, nothing happens. Now here's the moment of truth. There it is. I double clicked on that one, and it says you double clicked on the third table data. Okay, so basically you can see how you can also dynamically add functionality to your elements. So when you create your homework, you could just create the text boxes and add dynamically the code that responds to individual events. Okay. So that is an example of that. let's see what else. Obviously, the code could be a little bit more complex if you'd like it to be. There is another element we can use. Pretty much, this will be easy as well. If we go back to our code, we can simply copy this. Oh, are you seeing it? Yeah. So if we go back to the code, I'll just copy this one as well. Again, I'm gonna grab another table data element, maybe the first one this time. So 0. And instead of this, I'm going to say bind. Bind is so that you can bind to multiple types of events. So for instance, here I say, I want to bind to a clicking event. So this will be click, and then comma, so that after the comma comes the anonymous function. Okay, so the anonymous, that's pretty much it. So key value pairs again, where one is the name and then the value is the function itself. So now I have a clicking event, and this will be message 3, and it'll say, let's just say bind event. Bind event. So hopefully that'll work as well. So let's save it, switch over to the browser, share it. I'm going to refresh, and now add this and that. And now if I click, there it is. Bind event has happened. If I double click, you clicked on heading. If I one click, no, double click here. Double click event. There you go. All right, so that's, I think pretty much, there's a lot of variations of that, but that kind of covers how to tie functions to objects in a dynamic way. Are there any questions about this, guys?
I don't think so. I think it makes sense.
Great. All right, so that concludes that type of examples. And really, I think you guys are in really good shape now to complete the homework. Because I think next Monday or Tuesday, what I will do is I'll cover jQuery UI. So we'll just jump into that. And if we finish jQuery UI on that day, we will pretty much be done with, our coverage of jQuery. And then after that, you just have to do the homework, kind of practice. There's 2 homeworks for jQuery, and then we'll move on to the next topic, just to look at other alternatives. So let's see. I just want to make sure I'm not missing anything here. Obviously, on Monday, I will go over just a few more, just like I did with the previous object-oriented programming homework. I'll give you a few more hints without obviously solving the problem. All right, so I think this is just enough so that you get a good feel for how you would use jQuery on your own. So we talked about classes, adding borders, adding text, selecting things from a list. We talked about the each. We talked about anonymous functions and tying them to objects via events. Right, and we've pretty much finished for today, I think, with the new content. So let's see, we talked about chaining. I guess let's just do one last example. We had one last button there, so let's use that one. So the 4th button here, let's just say change text. Okay, so we're going to change the text of, let's say we're going to change the text of a cell. So we're going to do a new function here, change text, let's call it change cell. I'm going to go over here, function, change cell, curly bracket, and now all we have to do is pretty much change the text of one of the cells. So what do? We select, right, the table data elements. We have 4 of them. So I'm going to select equal, and I'm going to say, well, I want the second one, so 1. Okay. And from there, I'm going to change the text. So I'm gonna, oops, not here. Dot text. And I'm going to change this to something else. Let's say P&W. Okay. And so now that should be enough for it to work. All right. So let's save the file. Let's go to the browser again, refresh, change text, right? So if I click on it, there it is. I change P&W as well. So you've seen a lot of little examples of this. At this point, I could just do, you know, hundreds of variations of this. So that should conclude the topics for today. All right, so let's go ahead then and assign the homework. Okay, so that means that we can assign the homework. So we can go back to Brightspace. All right, and I'm going to now assign this homework, Jquery. All right, so homework, grade, calculator, Jquery. All right, so this will be due, today's the 18th, so therefore it would be due on the 25th by 10 p.m. Complete the attached Jquery homework. Right, and as I said, I will do more examples, a little bit more related to the homework on Tuesday, and then after that, we'll be in good shape to start Jquery UI, which is, it's very easy. That one's just about, like, how can I have nicer controls? So let's say I want a calendar, like a date picker, you know, those kinds of things, or I want a scroll bar, or I want, you know, autocomplete. So adding those controls that are a little bit more, you know, more advanced. So here the homework is complete the attached Jquery homework. Okay. So this document will show now, and it'll stay open until 27th. Is this clear enough, this description?
Yeah, pretty clear.
All right, so there you have it. Your homework has been assigned for next week. Okay, and then just expect a few more examples on Tuesday. Start this assignment, you know, right now, if you can, and have questions on Tuesday. That way on Tuesday, when I go over a few concepts, you'll be able to catch on to them really quickly, because, you know, when you ask yourself, how would I do this or that? And then on Monday, I'll kind of provide some hints about that. And then, you know, probably an open lab on Thursday to help you, and you submit that night, or we just start jQuery UI. All right, so at this point, I will stop the new, so there's no new content left for today. So I'm going to stop the recording, and then